This is the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Hello and welcome to the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown for May 2025. I'm your host, Eric Balkman. You may know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Insider Access on the Better Sports Network, and of course, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. You can connect with me on the X at Eric Balkman. That's EricBalkman. What a show we have for you tonight. And before we can get to it, I have to let you know that the FFPC, the sponsors of the show, has a lot of stuff going on right now. So since the last time I left you, all the orphans have sold out. We have no orphans left for 2025. However, never you worry. We have plenty of startup teams going on at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. They start at 100. They go up to 5,000. You can register for whatever price point you like and join in these startup leagues that are going off seemingly every single day right now, and play fantasy football 365 days a year with the FFPC. myffpc.com is where to go for that. The FFPC Main Event slow drafts are off and running as well. Those launched last Thursday. If you want to take your shot at $1 million grand prize, you can do so right now on myffpc.com, a $6 million plus prize pool. And you can register for that right now. Live drafts will start at the end of this month, but the slow drafts are already underway. Slow and live drafts are underway for the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. The Big Gorilla is something that we have done for the first time this year. It was branded as the Fantasy Pros Championship and the Football Guys Players Championship in the past. The Big Gorilla will feature $1 million grand prize, $350 entry fee, and the Early Rampage and the 7 Bananas promo are going on right now. I saw Fantasy Mojo, Darren Armani, who we'll reference in the show tonight. He has already cashed in a $125 free FFPC Best Ball Tournament entry based on him getting the 7-pick twice in a row. We've had people get it 3 times in a row. So you're getting a free main event entry in 2026 or 2025 with that as well. And if you hit it 5 times in a row, free Jungle Safari for 4, courtesy of the FFPC, or $50,000 cash, whatever you want. The Early Rampage Tournament, part of the Big Gorilla Tournament, as long as you are drafting in the first 200 drafts, which is still going on with the FFPC right now, you'll be eligible for that $10,000 grand prize and the $1 million grand prize for just a $350 entry fee. Remember, $50 discount for every third team you register there. The FFPC Superflex Best Ball and Best Ball tournaments are going on right now. $300,000 and $100,000 will be the grand prize, $125 and $35 entry. The big thing that we have this year, the FFPC Best Ball Tournament will feature a $100,000 runner-up prize. So first place is getting $300K, second place is getting $100K. We've never done that before. We're doing it this year. You don't even have to win the thing, and you will get a 6-figure grand prize in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament this year. Check it out. Drafts available with a 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clock. Tournaments are going on through the start of the season. Big Gorilla, Main Event, Dynasties. Yeah, we've got everything. So check it out at myffpc.com. Tonight, I want to bring on our guest here, ladies and gentlemen. He is no stranger to all these tournaments and winning accolades, because this dude has won 6 Dynasty league championships over the course of his career. And I feel like that's selling him short, because he has won a boatload of main event league championships. He's won a boatload of Big Gorilla Football Guys Fantasy Pros championships, a boatload of FFPC Best Ball and Classic 12-team closed league championships. there are a few people I bring on this show that I just like, I can't count all the titles they've won. This guy is one of them. You follow him on the X at Sales Recruiter. Please welcome in Mr. Josh Siegel. Josh, welcome back to the show. So glad to have you on tonight, man.
Always a pleasure, Balky. Thanks for having me, man.
How was the NFL draft for you? How did you spend it? What did you do? Because I know you're playing redraft, you're playing dynasty. What was it like for you watching that?
Well, I've got 3 kids and a wife, and they know I refer to the fantasy NFL draft as the Christmas for myself. So this was a little different of a year. I just moved back to Texas to be closer to all of our family. So when I was in Colorado, it was always me and a dozen or so of my boys. But it was primarily just hanging out and wishing some of my favorite players went to the right spots. And obviously, as a Broncos fan, longtime Broncos fan, I was certainly hoping that we got some of the players I was targeting. And certainly checked off a lot of boxes. You're kind enough to give me some of the questions we're going to go over tonight, and certainly looking forward to answering a few of them as well.
So I was in Green Bay because I'm not that far away from Green Bay, hanging out all weekend long. I did not see you do a selfie with Ian Rappaport like you have done in previous years. You were not at the draft in Green Bay, but you still took it in. You had a great time.
I did. No, I missed that. And I was going to ask you, how was it, man? Certainly epic. It was right in your backyard.
It just got progressively better. And I've shared this on a couple other podcasts. I'll share it tonight. Thursday, I was doing my local terrestrial show up there all week. So I was up there at 7 a.m, getting ready for my show. And then I just stayed up there. So Thursday came around. My son, who's 11 years old, got dropped off. I thought I was just taking him up on Saturday. He said, "Dad, no, you can't just take me up on Saturday. I won't know anybody who is getting drafted on Saturday." He had to come up on Thursday. So for the first 6 picks, and Josh, I don't think I've shared this. There's a Hail Mary thing that the NFL had going on where you're trying to you're throwing balls into nets, right? And my son loved it, and he was constantly doing that. I missed the first 6 picks. I could have been up by the stage, but I missed the first 6 picks because my son loved throwing into the nets. Yeah. So then, as soon as I said, "Hey, son, or Lucas, Raiders just drafted Ashton Genty," and then he kind of woke up and he's like, "Okay, we got to go by the stage." And I was with some people earlier in the day, and they were way far up to the stage. But having an undersized 11-year-old, Josh, made this easier. He's like, let's just worm our way to the front. We wormed all our way up to about 5 feet within our friends, which was not planned. 200,000 people were there that night.
Awesome.
We got right up by them, which was awesome. But then the highlight of the night, Thursday night, was the Packers taking a wide receiver in the first round for the first time in 23 years. And my son was there to experience that. I did not like the pick. I was not a Matthew Golden fan. We'll talk about Matthew Golden in a little bit. But that electric scene of everybody super excited, all these Packers fans, that was great. Friday night, I wormed my way all the way up. All of my friends wasted all their energy on Thursday, so I was the only one there on Friday. Wormed my way up to the fence for the second time in my life. I met Commissioner Roger Goodell, which was great. And then Saturday, I had some friends in town from Charlotte who are from this area. Now they're Panthers fans. They wore their Panthers gear. We got up on the stage on Saturday, and for the last essentially 3 rounds, I got to sit up at the stage, 4th row, from all the people making the picks, which was surreal. We follow this. We followed it for years, and to be sitting there, it was unbelievable. And then there was a Brad Paisley concert afterwards. I'm not a country music guy. I'm not a Brad Paisley fan. I'm like, I'll let somebody else experience this. And because of that decision, as I'm walking back to my car in Green Bay, population just over 100,000 people, nowhere to hide. I run into Daniel Jeremiah. I run into Rich Eisen. I run into Charles Davis, Joel Klatt, all these guys. Wow. Rich Eisen, I got a photo with him, had a nice chat with him. It was I said it was one of the best weekends of my life, just hanging out. So maybe we'll get the draft back in Green Bay because they will never host the Super Bowl in my lifetime. Maybe we'll get it back there. It was so much fun. I'll just give you a blanket question, Josh, to kick this off. Watching this draft, knowing that you draft in a ton of redraft leagues, in a ton of dynasty leagues, what was the big thing that stood out to you, maybe on Thursday or maybe on Friday, like the big fantasy days? What was the big thing that hung with you?
Well, real quick before I answer that question, I want to touch on, as you recall, the Ian Rappaport picture I have on my Twitter page. So that was the last time I was in Dallas, and they had the draft here. And I got to tell that one of my favorite stories real quickly is, so I convinced my company to let me get tickets to the red carpet. As you're aware, and I think they had it there in Green Bay prior to the draft starting, where, you know, it's exclusive. You got, 100 or so people down there. And so I'm there and I'm in my Broncos jersey. And this is the year, of course, you know, I'm really hoping that the Broncos draft Josh Allen. And Josh Allen, you know, being from Wyoming and everyone cloning him to John Elway, I'm just like, come on, let's get the right guy. We end up, you know, drafting Bradley Chubb, which we're not going to talk about. But so all the players start coming out, and I got to just talk about this cool story. So, you know, it was like, you know, Barkley comes out and he only signs a couple autographs, and it's the 2 or 3 kids with Giants hats. So I think he knew where he was going to go. And Sam Darnold comes out, and I'm not here to clown on Sam Darnold, but he's got his mom with him. And the first thing that she says is, don't take pictures, or no, my son's not signing any autographs. And if we remember, he was going to be the unanimous #1 pick that day. And I think maybe he started sending his career down a downward trajectory with how he was handling that red carpet. And, you know, a few other players come out, and then here comes Josh Allen. And I swear, man, this made me an ultimate fan of him, no matter where he went. Obviously, I want him to go to the Broncos, but he comes out, and I swear he high-fived like every 200 of us. And I'm, you know, if you recall, I'm wearing my custom Broncos suit. I got my cowboy hat on, my Broncos cowboy hat. And what was neat is every player comes out and they spin a wheel. And it's like, hey, let's see where you're going to land. And Josh Allen comes out, you know, he notices me and all my Broncos get up, and he spins the wheel, and he happens to land on the Broncos. And he's like, Bronco Cowboy. He points at me and he throws the football to me. It's somewhere on probably YouTube or whatever. I did catch it. I throw it back to him, and we didn't draft him. So we got off to the right start there. But it obviously, you know, ended, unfortunately, with us making the wrong decision and going defense and so on and so forth. But it was a cool experience. And obviously, you know, as you just experienced being in Green Bay, just you know, it's so much energy, and you're around a lot of like-minded people. But really, for me, to answer your question, what I enjoyed most about, you know, just looking into this draft was, you know, I was really hoping the Broncos were going to add some offensive weapons, because, you know, Bo Nix last year, you know, he did incredible. What do you have? 31 total touchdowns. And, you know, no one expected him to do what he did. He had a little bit of a slow start, but I was really excited to see that we, you know, a little disappointed we went defense with the first pick, but I get it, best player available. But really what was impressive to me is we got some of my favorite players. I know we're going to talk about RG Harvey here in a little bit, but I was a big fan of his. You know, I really wanted to get an explosive weapon on offense, and we definitely did that.
So I flashed up on the screen. I'll flash it up again. This is your X profile at @salesrecruiter_. This is you next to Ian Rappaport. And where is this draft that's taking place here?
This is the draft in Dallas. And, you know, since I was able to convince my team to get VIP tickets, I got special seating right there. And that was like live on the air. There's right before the first picks coming up. And Ian Rappaport, out of the corner of his mouth, he's like, kid, get the fuck away from me. We're going live on the air. So I just had to get my, you know, epic picture there. And of course, man, it was a fun experience.
You know what's funny about that is Friday night when I got up to the front of the general admission section, right up at the fence, and we had the ESPN cameras and the NFL cameras, and everybody's doing their #1. I'm like, I can't do that. I have to do something. So I'm doing, and this is what my 11-year-old son is telling me to do. The LaMelo Ball 6'7". I'm doing this. And then I'm doing that. And for this is like a generation ago. I'm doing the Dave Chappelle the robot, the guy who's always like doing this, like,
Yep.
and I was doing that I don't know if it made it on the air. I never got any texts or anybody, saying like, hey, Bulky, I just saw you on the show. It's fine. It was great. It was surreal. I loved it.
Awesome.
I will never forget it. And Josh, I think I might've told you this about a decade ago. I was at the draft in Chicago, the 2 years that they held it there. And I was obviously at the draft this year in Green Bay. And I would say, obviously, it was great, and the traffic was great. It took me like 40 minutes to get home. Normally, it takes me 25 minutes to get home from a Green Bay Packers home game. It only took me 40 minutes to get home, which was fantastic. But I'll say, like comparing the Chicago and Green Bay, it was just fantastic. If the draft is ever in Chicago or Green Bay again, maybe even Minneapolis, I'm probably going to go. It was so much fun. It was unreal. And I can't say one was better than the other. I just think like every draft is different. And you experienced that in Dallas too. Like, it's not necessarily about the players and the teams. It's just about the experience and celebrating and sometimes antagonizing with 31 other teams there. Yep. And I'm sure you experienced that as well.
I did. And as you probably experienced with your son, because, being in Dallas, it was pretty spread out. It was a 3-4 day event, even prior to the day of the draft. And, at the time I had, my kids were a little younger. This is, I can't remember, maybe 6 years ago. And, we brought all of our kids there and, we did all those events, throwing the football, the 40-yard dash, just, it was really just neat to be part of that community, like you said. And then, of course, I had to rile up some Raiders fans as usual. So,
I mean, it sounds dumb, right? It sounds like, yeah, I don't need to go to that. Yeah, you do. Just experience it once, and I think you'll want to come back again. I know I'll be back again anytime it's in the Midwest. Okay, I want to lead things off tonight, Josh, with a question from our longtime viewer, Bill Hollywood, who is chiming in on YouTube tonight. I was shocked to see Woody Marks drafted before Devin Neal. Is Woody Marks any good, and is he anything to worry about? I sure love where Nick Nash went. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Okay. Couple of things here. Let's lead off with the running backs here. I have been on the record saying that I was not a big Woody Marks fan prior to the NFL draft, but after I found out he landed in Houston and it's Joe Mixon and that's it. I mean, for the most part, that's it. I've become a Woody Marks fan. Devin Neal is an interesting guy because I drafted him in some early best balls, Josh, and I kind of regretted it because I feel like he's the type of guy that is being drafted on numbers and accumulation, and I don't think he's all that special athletically. So right now, when I look at it, I don't think that put it in a vacuum. I don't think that Marks and Neal are necessarily all that different. I would probably give the edge to Neal, or excuse me, I would probably give the edge to Marks. But now I know landing spot. I definitely am on board with Woody Marks over Devin Neal. Your thoughts on those two running backs now that we know their landing spots in 2025?
Yeah, so just off the bat, Devin Neal, he was without a doubt one of my favorite running backs. I actually wanted the Broncos to draft him. As you mentioned, athletic profile is one thing. I did, and here's why. Because I remember watching the Kansas and CU game, and I don't know if you recall that game, but this guy was a borderline monster. I think he had 300 total yards. He looked like a one-man wrecking crew, and he just looked like he was on another level, and he was a man among boys. And after watching that game, and I talked to a few of my other partners that I share teams with, and I'm like, man, I really want to, him to go to the Broncos and at least have some decent draft capital. So I'm gonna agree with you because he was probably my highest owned rookie running back in best ball, and I was targeting him in the 160 to 170 range. RJ Harvey was there too. But in full transparency, I had Neal slightly ahead of Harvey, just from the standpoint of where I thought they might get drafted. I thought they'd both be about third-round talents. And Woody Marks is someone I looked at, and I looked at him as more of a third down back. As we know, he's fast. He can catch the ball. But I didn't think he had the profile of a Devin Neal, which I could see as someone that could touch the ball in all three downs, be a good pass blocker, somebody that would get on the field more often. And as you mentioned with landing spot, they're certainly probably maybe flip-flop in most people's eyes. I've got some marked shares recently, later in the fourth and fifth round in some of my dynasty drafts right now. But Devin Neal's going ahead of him, from what I recall. And he's, I'm grabbing him end of the third, early fourth. But it's because he went in the sixth round of the NFL draft. If he went in the third round of the NFL draft, he's going higher.
So that's the thing right now. I'm looking at Fantasy Mojo, at Fantasy Mojo on the X, fantasymojo.com. Darren Armani runs that. He is the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joe's Challenge. If you are playing in the FFPC, highly recommend that you have a subscription to Fantasy Mojo. Devin Neal is coming off the board in FFPC single quarterback drafts at the 302. Running back 26. Beg your pardon. Running back 25 is where he is going right now at the 30. What did I just say? 306? Yeah. 306 beg your pardon. 302. God, I'm all off kilter. Devin Neal, 302. Now, Woody Marks, if we look at him, that dude is running back 43 at the 403. Now, when I say RB, 25 RB 43, that's taking into account certain drafts that have free agent running backs that maybe not every draft has. So the important thing to understand here is the ADP. Neal 302, Woody Marks 403. To your point, Josh, I would say that Neal is the more attractive player on a landing spot because it's Kendre Miller, it's Alvin Kamara, and then you have Woody Marks, like Joe Mixon's in front of him. So not a lot of goodness for 2025 and maybe 2026 in Houston for Woody Marks. But for New Orleans, if Alvin Kamara falls off a cliff this year or next year, it's like Devin Neal versus Kendre Miller. I just looked it up too. When you bring up that Colorado game, Devin Neal, 287 rushing yards, 207 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. He caught 4 passes in that game for 80 yards and another score. 4 touchdowns. And obviously this knocked Colorado out or obviously impacted their winning the Big 12. I always thought like this guy was athletically, as far as Devin Neal goes, I thought this guy was athletically disadvantaged to everybody else. But Josh, the production for what Neal put up, not only in this Colorado game, but for over the course of his career. If you're a production guy, you got to love Neal, and you certainly do.
Yeah, he just looked faster and stronger and better than anyone else on that field that day. And, he was on my radar, but being a CU fan and just watching that game, it opened up my eyes. And, obviously the NFL feels a little differently. I do like the landing spot. I don't have the contract in front of me, but I think Alvin Kamara's got one more year of guaranteed money. So, and they obviously have the new coaching staff coming in. We all know the last coaching staff didn't like Kendre Miller at all. I was a fan of Kendre Miller at TCU. He was a third round pick. I thought he was fairly dynamic. I recall the one play he made where he caught a nice pass down the sideline. He dove for it. And then I think he got injured just like he always did. So it's hard to say what's gonna happen and shake out in that backfield this year. It's a Kamara's backfield. However, we know that they like to pound the rock. So there's going to be other people that are going to get carries, and I think Devin Neal's still a decent pick. He's someone I still have my eyes on. But I was hoping he'd have a little higher draft capital. But I am getting, I guess, what maybe is a slight discount because he was a second round pick all day long, and I'm drafted more in the super flexes than I am in the standard leagues. Right. I'm only in a couple standard dynasties right now. I'd say the large majority of what I'm doing is in super flex, so it's going to push that ADP down. And if you look up Fantasy Mojo, which obviously I love having an account there, and Armani's the man. I believe he's closer to that. I don't have it right in front of me. I'm sure you do, but I would assume he's probably closer to that 3.11 or 3.12 in a super flex, and that's.
So when I'm looking at it right now, Josh, when it comes to Devin Neal, 307 running back 27 right now. And again, don't get hung up on the running back situation, because obviously there's certain veteran running backs that are available in certain leagues that they're not available in others. But Devin Neal is going behind Jaden Blue, Dylan Sampson. He is going ahead of DJ Giddens and Jordan James in the Dynasty Superflex right now, according to Mojo. So final thing I'll bring up with the New Orleans Saints running backs, and I guess we'll lead off with this tonight with Neil. Alvin Kamara is under contract not only this year, he's under contract next year in his age 31 season with the New Orleans Saints. Coming up on 2027, it's an easy void for the Saints, and they can get out of that deal. But you're talking about 2 years worth of Devin Neal here, like toiling, making making sure he is the guy. And obviously the New Orleans Saints could go back to the well and draft another running back here. What's the likelihood that Devin Neal is actually the guy over Kendra Miller, over whoever they might draft next year as the heir apparent for Alvin Kamara? How strongly do you feel about that, knowing what you know about Neal?
Yeah, no. So again, we have a history of running backs coming out of nowhere. Certainly being a Broncos fan, we all know what Philip Lindsay did as an undrafted free agent. And then, you got the Arian Fosters of the world that went undrafted and went on to have many years of running back one stats. So 6th round draft capital isn't that exciting. It certainly, like I said, knocks him down a few pegs. However, I do still like the talent. He's a guy that can catch the ball. He's got great vision. He may not be as explosive as some others. However, I'm still buying him, and I do believe he's got value. And like I said, proof's in the pudding. We're going to see what he can do. I believe he can get on the field, because we know Kendra Miller is not going to be healthy, and we know Alvin Kamara can't carry the load. So there's going to need to be other people there that are going to make an impact. So I say with the end, and see what he can do. But I'm buying.
You're buying on that, and it makes perfect sense. The argument you have put out there is unflawed, and I'll have to take a look at that in some of the rookie drafts I'm in right now, as well as some of the redrafts I'm in with the KFFSC. Let's talk, Josh, about another running back, and this was a guy. It was a weird situation for Quinshon Judkins fans, because they were celebrating the pick. I was walking up to the front of the stage on Friday, and I see Quinshon Judkins' mug on the big scoreboard that they had in Green Bay. And I'm like, all right, Judkins to the Browns. I love it. Great landing spot. And then I fast forward, and I see them also taking Dylan Sampson. How much does it concern you as a guy who maybe has already drafted Quinshon Judkins, maybe a guy that is thinking about drafting Judkins in some of your other leagues? How much should it concern you, knowing that the Browns also drafted Dylan Sampson in this same draft after they took Judkins in the early second?
Well, for running back's sake, I was surprised you went ahead of Travion Henderson, to be first and foremost, because I have Henderson quite a bit ahead of him. And it's mainly because when you're playing fantasy football, you want guys to catch the ball, because we're playing primarily in point per reception leagues. The Browns liked him for a reason, right? He fits that Nick Chubb profile. I'm sure one of my buddies is listening, Mike Pempin, who's in Cleveland. And, him and I share a dynasty team, and we were just on the clock the other day at 1.7. And I'm like, let's trade back a few spots and get Henry. And we have 2 teams together, and we happen to be in a similar range on both. And we just agreed, all right, you get one guy on one team, I get my Harvey on the other team. But I don't see a ton of upside there, mainly because, like you mentioned, Dylan Sampson, right? Tennessee, we know they produced Alvin Kamara. He's a fast running back. I don't have it in front of me. I think he was a sub 4.40, if I recall, and he can blaze. So he's a little bit of a compliment, I believe, more to Judkins, which is going to mean he's going to take snaps away from him. So for that reason, I wasn't as excited, because I see his upside being capped a little bit. And but we all know what Nick Chubb did. I think Nick Chubb, if I recall, he was drafted in the similar range by the Browns, right? He was an early 2nd round pick. He came off some knee injuries, which made him fall. and we all know what he provided to the Browns over many years. And I just think he's a guy that's gonna get you a few points here and there, but he's capped on his upside. So, I'm taking Trayvon Henderson ahead of him. If I had to choose, I'm taking RJ Harvey ahead of him, 1-for-1. And obviously, I just think he's capped because of the Dylan Sampson's, drafting. And we'll see how it plays out. But, it's a lightning in a bottle type situation.
You mentioned RJ Harvey, and I know you're dialed into the Broncos here, but as far as FFPC rookie drafts go, right now, according to Mojo, RJ Harvey, on average, running back 5 at the 110. Quinshon Judkins, 107. So 3 picks ahead of Harvey, but he is the RB4. So he's 1 running back ahead of Harvey, yet 3 picks. You already said you like Harvey better than Judkins. Why is it, and why should it be wheels up for RJ Harvey for FFPC players in Dynasty Leagues this year?
So I don't have a lot of skills, but one of my skills is Broncos running backs. You probably know name Monte Ball very well, right? From Wisconsin. And I've got plenty of witnesses. I did not like Monte Ball. I didn't like that draft pick. I didn't believe he was. I liked Lindsey, being a CU guy and watching him. So I've been pretty consistent, Clinton Portis, right? So I feel like and obviously we all loved Terrell Davis. So I've been pretty consistent in hitting on most all my Broncos running back picks. And I was a big RJ Harvey fan even before the Broncos took him. And I actually thought they were going to trade back to get Devin Neal when the trade back happened for the Broncos. If you recall, they slid back, about 10 or so picks. And I believe it's because Trayvon Henderson was their top target and he didn't fall to them. So their next top target, as we now know, was RJ Harvey. And I trust Peyton. We all know what he's done with, from Reggie Bush to recently with Alvin Kamara. He's pretty damn good at recognizing running back talents. I'll tell you why I'm a big fan of RJ Harvey. It's simply one stat. I look at the 10-yard split. I like explosive running backs in that regard. And, I'm a little counterintuitive because I just said how, Neal is maybe not as explosive on that 10-yard split, if I recall. However, RJ Harvey, the guy looked just incredible. He looked like he could shoot through the line quickly. And if you gave him a little bit of space, he was gone. And I believe he scored over 30 touchdowns total the last 2 years. So he can catch the ball. He's dynamic in space. He's a goal line back. And there's just not a lot not to love about the guy. We have esteem, as a plotter right now on our roster, and there's just nothing else really there. So he's going to get every shot he can to be successful. I believe the Broncos were top 5 in running back targets. So he's going to catch a lot of passes. He's going to get a chance to, make an impact on offense. And for those reasons, I'm buying that guy. And I was a little sad because, I wanted a lot of these rookie drafts to speed up quickly. And as you mentioned, I've been done pretty well in Dynasty. So I was drafting late in a lot of leagues, 111, 112. And, the drafts that happened fast, I was able to get some RJ Harvey shares, 110, 111, 112. And then he started creeping up. So I can be open and enthusiastic about him now for everyone that's listening because all my drafts have already gone past the first round. So for that reason, I just think the guy's going to make an impact. I'm all over him in redraft. I've been following where he's at in best ball. He's going a little higher than I expected. I think he's in that 5th or 6th round on underdog now, which I'm a little surprised by from the 150s. However, he's going to end up there in our main event in FFPC gorilla drafts, right around that range, and I'm still buying him there because I believe he's gonna outplay that draft that draft spot.
As far as redraft goes, I'll just reference the big gorilla on Fantasy Mojo right now. RJ Harvey, running back 21 at the 508. That's the identical IDP of IDP. It's the identical ADP of Quinshon Judkins. He is going 5 picks in front of James Conner. He is going 1 pick behind Chuba Hubbard, and he is going 4 picks behind Travion Henderson right now. Josh, I want to ask you this right now. And I want to preface this by letting you know I've only had one dynasty rookie draft for me personally go off. I had the 112, and I ended up taking RJ Harvey at the 112, and I didn't necessarily need running backs on this team. Okay. I had Chase Brown. I had Kyron Williams. I had Saquon Barkley. I didn't necessarily need a running back, but I felt Harvey was was the correct choice there. Now, the haters, the pundits out there, the antagonists to RJ Harvey would say, look, Josh, this is a guy that is old. He's an older running back coming into the NFL draft, which also means that he was an older running back beating up on 18, 19, 20-year-old guys in college. It's clearly not a concern for you. And I know you have your blue and orange goggles on as far as Broncos go, but can you tell those people out there who believe that age is a detriment of why they're avoiding him in drafts, why that should not be a detriment for people trying to win their league and in turn getting RJ Harvey to do that on their team?
Yeah, and that's a great point. Here's the thing. I generally look at fantasy and dynasty specifically as about a 3-year window, because we all know how much things change, where a guy that's really good and then they invest in higher draft capital a couple years later. So it happens all the time. So with RJ Harvey, I would say the one thing I would compare him to is a very similar back that you know very well, Aaron Jones. Yeah. Similar size, similar playing style, and I don't know. I don't have it right in front of me, but Aaron Jones is 30 or 31 years old right now. And I don't understand why he's still consistently being undervalued. The guy put up 240 plus fantasy points last year. I know he won me a ton of money, and I got him in later drafts. So yeah, age is definitely a factor in when you're looking at dynasty, but I wouldn't look at it as a tiebreaker. I look at it as is the guy good? And sure, you said, is he beating up on younger guys? That could be a variable there. But I know I've mentioned this in many of the shows we've been on in the past, and you may recall last year a guy that I was obsessed with was Puka Nacua. And we all know what he ended up doing, right? So I use my eyes, man. I look at players with my own eyes. I watch tape, and I decide, do I like this person or not? And Puka Nacua is a great example. RJ Harvey is a great example. Philip Lindsay's a great example. If they look good, I'm drafting them.
Barney Newkirk loved the pick of RJ Harvey for me at the 112. And I think Barney is in that league with me now that I think about it. I'm pretty sure he's in that league. If he's not, no, he's not. I got to think about this for a second. He is not in that league, but Barney and I are in a league with the draft going off on this coming Saturday. So there I go. So now I know how he feels about RJ Harvey. Aaron Jones, for what
Snipe him, Barney. Snipe him.
Yes, he probably will. He probably will. And in fact, he probably can because, and Josh, I'll share this story just real quick. Aaron Jones is 30 years old. He will turn 31 in December this year. And the Vikings have already invested in him for the next couple of years. You'll appreciate this, Josh. So I for all the RotoViz high stakes lowdown listeners who have heard this before, I apologize. In this league that I'm in with Barney, in week 14 of the 2024 season, I had Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy on my team. Lamar Jackson was on bye that week. I was managing too many teams, and I never put in Purdy over Jackson. So I lost that week, and I lost the victory points that I would have gained that week. And I played it out, Josh. If I would have correctly started Purdy instead of Lamar Jackson, who was on a bye that week, I would have finished runner-up in the league. However, because I didn't start Purdy that week, and because I started Jackson, I missed the playoffs, but I won the consolation bracket. And the consolation, whoever wins that, you get the number one pick. So now it's like, I look at it in hindsight. Yeah, I missed out on the second place prize, but I also get Ashton Genty this year. So it's like, it's kind of like, how do I feel about that? And obviously right now I feel better about the Genty thing. But because I have the 101, I'm thinking I will not have RJ Harvey at my disposal at the 201. In other words, if I want Genty and Harvey, I'm going to have to trade up for Harvey at the back end of that first round. You probably agree with that, right?
Oh, I definitely do. And when I looked at Mojo the other day, I didn't see, I don't recall one draft where Ashton Gentry went past the one pick. And that's very different than I believe any year from the past where, there's always been a guy where it's like, maybe 80, 90% of the consensus, but 100% consensus is pretty convincing. And I believe it. I was a little sad he went to my rival Raiders. But he's going to be a stud for many years to come. I like to make dynasty trades where I'm like, all right, I'll do the deal, but let's flip first round picks just because I'm confident that I'm going to do better than the other team. And a few of those first round picks ended up being the number one pick. So I was able to get my fair share of Genty picks as well in the number one slot there.
Regarding Genty, I mean, like, I haven't given much thought to this. If I have the 101, this is the only league I actually have the 101 in. I'm not giving much thought. Like, it's Genty there. How much concern do you have about him as a pro, knowing he played at Boise State? Again, not SEC or Big Ten defenses or anything like that. Does that factor in at all, or are you just a big Genty believer?
I'm a big Genty believer, and it's simply back to, like I mentioned, I'm using my eyes. This guy just is breaking more tackles than anyone I've ever seen. He's slippery. He catches the ball, and he's, guy that we remember a long time ago, and I was a little younger, but Eric Dickerson, man. I mean, the guy ran bigger than he was, and I like that as a little bit of a comparison here. So I see Genty having a great career. I wanted to get the number one pick because he was the guy I targeted the whole time, and I'm pretty happy to have him on a few of my teams.
We've been like the first, I can't believe we're already 40 minutes in. We've only talked running backs. Let's talk receivers here. Travis Hunter got snagged by the Jaguars after they decided to trade up from the 5 with the Browns to number 2. What do you think his wide receiver workload and cornerback workload will look like for Jacksonville in 2025? You've been in a ton of rookie leagues already. How are you treating this? How are you attacking Travis Hunter?
Travis Hunter, for me, is someone I was looking to grab almost as early as the 1.2. And selfishly, I was hoping they were talking more about him playing more cornerback because I had so many later picks. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to have 100% Travis Hunter this year. And again, you're making this a little easy on me because I watch a lot of CU football and I watched a lot of Travis Hunter. And we probably already know the coach talk, right? With Cohen. So he already stated this guy's going to play full snaps on offense. They're going to play him mostly on offense. He's going to play some defense. And I was looking at that as a discount card if he went to a different team. I didn't want him to go to the Browns because you have access of our highest ownership players. And Jerry Jeudy, I don't know if it's good admitting, is my number one owned wide receiver. Happy he got a fresh start. He ended up finishing the season really good last year. I did not want, Hunter to go to the Browns. So I was really happy to see that he went to Jacksonville. Thomas is certainly elite and somebody that, Brian Thomas is what, a top 20 dynasty asset to everyone right now. I'm looking at the opportunity with Hunter. Is it crazy to think that Hunter outperforms Brian Thomas over the next 5 years? I don't think it is. So The biggest concern is obviously defense versus offensive splits.
It's not crazy. It is not crazy. And I'll say this for anybody who thinks Josh Siegel is crazy here. This is a dude who was in how many offensive meetings at Colorado? I don't know. Very little to none. And now his team that drafted him is treating him as a wide receiver. And he is going to be in the wide receiver meetings. He is going to be primarily a wide receiver. Brian Thomas was unbelievable. He was awesome. And obviously the odds are stacked against Hunter being a better receiver than Thomas is over the next 5 years. But to Josh's point, there is a non-zero chance that Hunter is the receiver you want in Jacksonville over the next 5 years. Maybe not in 2025, but there is a chance that this guy, with proper seasoning, with proper coaching, with proper, everything that he wasn't getting at Colorado, that he will get in the pros as a primary wide receiver over a corner, there is something to be said about that. It's not going to take away from Brian Thomas. He's going to be great. Trevor Lawrence is the guy who should be popping a bottle of champagne every single night, knowing that he has Brian Thomas on one side, Travis Hunter on the other side. He's got Brenton Strange down the seam. And I don't know, Bashal Tutin and LaQuint Allen and Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. I don't know if he's celebrating that. But this Jacksonville offense is something to watch going forward. Now, Josh, if you weren't here's the thing. If you weren't taking Travis Hunter as the top receiver off the board, you probably were taking Teterow and McMillan. I have been on this show for the last several months, and I've been very skittish, very nervous about Teterow and McMillan in my dynasty rookie drafts. The fact that he got top 10 draft capital has assuaged me on a lot of that, and I feel pretty good. Are you a Teterow and McMillan believer, knowing he's catching passes now, essentially as the number one receiver in Carolina from Bryce Young?
I didn't think I was going to have any shares of him, and I did get one, and it was because I believe in that draft he fell to the 1.7, and Hunter went at 1.3 in that draft. So I was a little disappointed, and that was one of those leagues. It's a roto flex where you have to start 3 wide receivers and 2 flex. So it gives wide receivers a little bit more value. And I also recall a conversation that you and I had years ago in Vegas, and it was the year that Justin Jefferson was drafted by the Vikings, and you were just pissed that the Packers didn't take him that year. So, you kind of similar, right? We kind of know certain guys are really good. I'm trying to remember, was it Khalil? The other guy went to Arizona. They just haven't really produced great wide receivers.
Well, they're okay. Hold on. There was N'Keal Harry who went to Arizona State, but that was not Arizona.
That's right, Arizona State. Yeah. My fault. Yeah. Same state. Yeah. All right.
Same area of the country. Josh, that's a mea culpa on you. I have made that mistake because I think part of the reason was I look at these guys physically, they're big imposing receivers that fail to get separation, and they're both playing in Arizona, the whatever it was, the 48th state in our country. And so I just lumped them in, probably unfairly on my part, but I do think there's something to be said for these guys when they get to the next level. Unless you are elite when it comes to 50-50 balls, unless you are elite with establishing your my ball mentality, this is not going to go well for you if you cannot get separation. Tet McMillan did not get separation. JJ Zachariason was talking about this on his podcast earlier this week. This is a guy that, if you look at certain metrics, you would never touch this guy in your rookie drafts, not even in the second round. And then if you look at other metrics, you're like, oh my God, this guy could be the 101. So that's where I come into this. There's a lot to like, but there's also some red flags with Tet McMillan here. And he's kind of a polarizing guy. I've seen him go as high as the 102. I've seen him go as late as the 107. So that's the thing right now, Josh. And I know you at least have one share of him, right?
One share, and it was so hard not to take Ibuka over him at that spot because 1-to-1, Ibuka all day long, right? And we all know what he did at Ohio State. I recall him being, they produce wide receivers, like the Chocolate Factory produces chocolate. So, and one of my other favorite receivers back in the day from Ohio State, David Boston, who I would consider comparable in size and lack of separation to Tet. And Tet just, again, I just don't see these bigger receivers having as long of a career. They're a little better in the red zone. I also compare him a little bit to Cortland Sutton, who I've met in person. Great guy. But I'm just not a huge fan of these big receivers that don't separate. And yeah, I reluctantly hit the button to draft him there, and I might regret it. And I'm probably going to say, why didn't I get Ibuka? Because I only have one share of Ibuka too, because I was drafting so much Harvey. So it's one of those things. That's what makes all this fun. If we all had the ability to go in the future and know if we were right or not, we'd all be filthy rich, right? Or win everything. So hey, we don't always bat 1,000, but it's fun to play this dynasty game. And not a big fan. I got one share, and I think I agree with a lot of the consensus. But there's also people that love this guy, and we
Yes.
know there's going to be target shares there. So it's my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. But if he does explode, I got one share to hold on to.
Right, exactly. It's the FOMO share. That's what it is. What do you make of Egbuka?
Bingo.
Because Egbuka is an interesting guy, knowing that he's got a fairly high floor, right? Maybe a limited ceiling, but knowing where he got drafted and knowing how Tampa Bay has buttered their bread with Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin, with Jalen McMillan towards the end of the season. You know that there is going to be a place for Egbuka in this offense. It just may not be in 2025. It sounds like you're willing to take not a mulligan, but you're willing to take a red shirt for Egbuka in 2025. And then knowing that in 2026, if Godwin is let go or if Evans is not re-signed, this could be a big Honeywell for Egbuka in 2026.
Absolutely. And I'll just give you the comparison that I have with Egbuka. It's a simple another Ohio State wide receiver, JSN.
Yeah.
We remember what happened in Seattle. JSN fell down, the draft boards primarily because they had Metcalf there who was killing it. They had Lockett still signed for a couple of years. 2 years later, they're both off the team, and JSN's pretty much the only guy in town.
Right.
So there's a reason why I call them the Sharps, and I'd like to hope I'm part of that, discussion, are choosing Egbuka. It's because they know he's talented. They know he's a great route runner. He's going to have a wonderful career. And in any of the drafts I've been in, I haven't seen him go past the 2.1 or 2.2. Maybe I've seen him go as early as the 1.6. Which now I'm talking to myself, and can I get a redo? Can I draft him over Tet, please? Sorry, let me change my mind.
It's one of those things, right? That we wish we could have. We can't have nice things. Barney Newkirk wants to know about Trey Harris. Barney, I promise you we'll get to Trey Harris in a second. Before we get to him, I want to get to the guy who was drafted before Trey Harris in the NFL draft, and that's Luther Burden III. He goes to Chicago. A land of Caleb Williams, but also a land of Ben Johnson, who is going to be the first-year head coach there. Obviously, a new offense, a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator. What do you think Luther Burden's going to have, or what's going to happen to Luther Burden III in Chicago, knowing how Ben Johnson has treated the slot before, knowing that Luther Burden has played a lot of slot at Missouri, and also knowing that Rome Odunze and DJ Moore are still there? This is a conundrum here. Josh, how are you handling Luther Burden in your rookie drafts?
Yeah, I have one or two shares, and for the reasons you mentioned, he was handpicked to be the slot guy. I believe that's going to put Odunze outside. And I don't have it again right in front of me, but I don't know if DJ Moore signed more than like another year, maybe two at the most. And it's hard to project, down the road too much farther. But they also drafted another offensive weapon that, we're aware of of Colson Loveland. They're at tight end. So they went back-to-back offensive players. We're going to go back to, is there too many mouths to feed? However, if he turns this Bears offense into anything like what the Lions have done through the years, they're all going to eat, or the most of them are going to eat, right? So I do believe there's some opportunities for Luther Burden III. I consider his playing style. I think other people have referenced Deebo Samuel, just with his ability to, break tackles and grab the, really elite with the ball in his hands. He was a 5-star athlete, if I recall. He was highly recognized in college. And I do know there's a fair amount of people that love him, and there's a fair amount of people that hate him. I'm probably more in the in-between right there, just because, it's the FOMO where I don't want to miss out on getting, some more Chicago Bears shares, just because I do like the upside of that offense moving forward. But I believe these other players cap his redraft opportunities. But from a dynasty standpoint, he's definitely someone that I wouldn't mind having on my teams. primarily because I do think being in the slot and being, let's call it the Ramon-Ra St. Brown in the future, he's going to have an opportunity to really make a difference. And I think the Bears are going to score more points than they have in the past.
Yeah, I think that's the thing to keep in mind. This is not the Bears offensive line, excuse me, from 2024. This is a 2025 revamped offensive line. This is Ben Johnson knowing that he wants to put his signature on this offense. He drafts Colston Loveland at 10. He drafts Luther Burden in the early second round. Like, you know what he wants to do with this offense, and that's why I think it usually has me breaking in ties in favor of Burden. Now, I will say this. In the one dynasty league I've had to go that I've had go off so far, Josh, I was deciding between Luther Burden and RJ Harvey, and I went with Harvey, right? In that same draft later on, I had to make a decision between Bichelle Tootin and Trey Harris. And I was ready to take Tootin. And normally my 11-year-old son, I don't know how he does this, but he's usually dead on with his dynasty rookie draft choices. It usually pays off 2 or 3 years down the road. He told me Trey Harris over Tootin. Shout out to Mason Spain, who is a longtime FFPC and KFFSC player. I was texting with him at my Kentucky Derby party on Saturday. He said, no, don't take Tootin, take Harris. Everybody I talked to said Harris. So I eventually said, okay, I'm probably wrong on this. I'm going to take Harris. Number one, did I make the right choice? Trey Harris over Bichelle Tootin. And then number two, what kind of role do you think Harris is going to have in the Chargers offense with Justin Herbert next to Ladd McConkey, knowing that Quentin Johnston is still in that offense as well?
So I didn't get a chance to touch on it, but I actually like Trey Harris more than Burton. And in the draft where I got Burton, Trey Harris went 2.1, which I believe is one of the earliest, if per Mojo, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was like, come on, man, can a guy have nice things? So I would say I settled for Burton in that circumstance. Again, it could still work itself out. Trey Harris, what is he competing with? Quentin, can't catch the ball, Johnston. And I look at what they do in important games. Last game of the season, Chargers have nothing to play for. Quentin Johnston puts up 180 yards, and I think a touchdown and 7 or 8 catches or whatever. And then in the playoff game, the guy I don't even know if he caught a pass. So, at the end of the day, I know the coaching staff didn't forget that. And they drafted Trey Harris where they drafted him, in the early second round for a reason. And again, another school that just brings out good wide receivers is Ole Miss, right? And I know he's been compared to A.J. Brown for that reason. And for rightful reason, he has a very similar playing style. I believe he's a little taller. A.J. Brown, I think, is 6'1". He's 6'2". But they both are ball hawks. And it's one of those things. I don't love them in redraft. I got some underdog shares of them for best ball. But I love his upside because he's very complimentary to what McConkey's going to do for you. Now, McConkey will probably always be that number one, and that's another player, just as we're on the topic, he might be my second owned wide receiver. I loved his ability to separate. And if we all remember the scouting combine last year, the guy looked like the best damn player on the field. So I'm shocked. I can't remember. I think it was the Buffalo Bills who, they made that trade up, and I'm like, they're going to get McConkey. Nope. Keon. and McConkey just fell right into the Chargers' lap. Yeah. And what a steal, man. And that guy's just incredible. And look what he did in that same playoff game. He kept him in it, right? Every time he thought the Chargers were out, here comes McConkey for a long touchdown. And the guy's elite. So Trey Harris, you're going to need to be a little bit patient with him. He's going to be a great player and a good dynasty asset. He's not really on my redraft radar, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends the year as a wide receiver 3 in redraft either, just because the talent is there.
So with in regards to Harris, I'm lukewarm on him as far as his future goes. I'm hopeful, as you are, that he turns into something. If not, whatever. I get it. But I do think the complementary game that he provides in Los Angeles to Ladd McConkey, I think is going to pay dividends. And I think that is why we should be believing in Trey Harris going forward. Now, I want to flip this to tight ends. We have not talked. This is sacrilege. We have a FFPC podcast here, Josh, and we have not talked tight ends until an hour in, which is ridiculous. And I want to bring it up right now. In the FFPC Dynasty Rookie Draft ADP, Loveland and Loveland and Warren are going at the 109, identical, right? At the end of the first round. Mason Taylor, the end of the second round. Elijah Arroyo, the end of the second round. Harold Fannin, the end of the second round. Terrence Ferguson, not until the early third round. And I think this is wrong. I think he should be going earlier. We heard from the reports that if the Rams did not trade with the Falcons, they would have taken Terrence Ferguson in the first round, which obviously would have increased his draft capital, which obviously would have increased his rookie ADP. And then they still ended up getting him with their pick in the second round. I love this guy. I love what I saw at the Senior Bowl. And it's bad that I have not drafted him yet. But Terrence Ferguson at the 303 in FFPC tight end premium rookie drafts, I think that is a massive steal. How close do you think he is in regards to Colston Loveland's value, in regards to Ty Warren's value? Should we be treating Terrence Ferguson in that same tier?
You're making a lot of these questions a little too easy on me, Balky, because we got another guy that's from Colorado. So he went to high school in Colorado. I followed him pretty closely, mainly because Colorado doesn't produce crap when it comes to NFL talent generally. So I followed him quite closely. The guy's incredible after the catch. And I recall, we'll just give the shout out again to the Fantasy Mojo. I recall looking at, and I'm sure you're going to look this up right now, his range. He's one of the most polarizing ranges for dynasty picks via Fantasy Mojo. I've seen him go as early as 2-3. And of course, it's in drafts where I don't have any picks until the fifth round, where he's going in like the early fourth. And I'm just desperately trying to trade up and get the guy. And no one's making moves in some of these leagues. So, yeah, I'm a Terrence Ferguson fan. We all know Sean McVay feeds those tight ends. Higbee, whatever. What is he out after this year? He was injured the majority of last year. They don't really have much. They lost Cooper Kupp. There's a ton of open shares or open targets available right now in that offense. So you got Puka Nacua. You got Tutu Atwell, and then you got Terrence Ferguson. So I'm going to draft that guy. He's on my radar as a later round pick. I'm not sure where he's going right now. I haven't done any redrafts yet, even though I have a boatload of credits to start using. I like to kind of wait until July to start making those drafts. But I do believe that he's someone that I'm going to target later on, and if I can get him after the 10th round, he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be heavily targeting as a redraft player. If we're comparing all these guys equally, I bet you he's way farther behind, Loveland and Warren in redraft. But from a dynasty standpoint, we all know you're going to need to pay a first round draft capital for those two other wide receivers, and it's not out of the question that Terrence Ferguson has a better rookie year than both of those guys.
This may spur you on, Josh, to being drafting in redraft earlier than you would have expected. Let me give you the rookie ADP right now. So I mentioned Loveland and Warren. They're 109 in rookie ADP. This is non-Superflex. Terrence Ferguson, 302. You mentioned the range, and this is insane because I didn't realize the range till you said it. Terrence Ferguson has gone as early as the 203. This is non-Superflex, regular one quarterback leagues in rookie drafts. Terrence Ferguson as early as the 203, as late as the 505. This guy has 3 rounds of range right now with Ferguson, which is incredible. Now, as far as the big gorilla goes right now, we're trying to win $1 million, $350 to enter. I'll tell you this right now. The ADP, Warren and Loveland are up there. Warren has 705 ADP. Loveland has 804 ADP. So Warren in the mid 7th, Loveland in the early 8th. You have to go all the way down to the end of the 16th round right now. Terrence Ferguson at the 1609. Not only is he going behind Warren and Loveland, he's going behind Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, and Harold Fannin. I am with you, Josh. I think the fact that we talk about this tonight, over the next 48 hours, we're going to see a surge. And this is, I don't think I'm giving this podcast too much credit. I think we're going to see a surge of Ferguson not going in the 17th round anymore. He's going to go higher, and he should go higher. How many times have we heard it? Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm talks about this all the time. If you want to have a chance at being noteworthy or fantasy worthy, you have to, as a tight end, you have to have close to number 2 receiving potential on your team. Now he's not going to have number 2, but he's going to be close to it, because you're going to have Puka Nacua, who has hurt a lot. We love the way that Puka Nacua plays, but let's face it, he misses games as a result. And then you have Devontae Adams, who is awesome, but at the same time, not exactly a spring chicken anymore. There are going to be Ferguson moments this year, Ferguson windows. Now, maybe that's better in best ball, hashtag better in best ball. I don't know. But Ferguson, as far as a redraft league goes, where I have to submit lineups every week, yeah, I'm taking Ferguson as my backup tight end. And I have full confidence in that going forward. No question. Okay. Sorry, I've talked a lot. Let's move on to quarterbacks. And this is the one quarterback question I'm going to ask you, Josh. Jalen Milroe. You play in a lot of FFPC Superflex Dynasty Leagues. The quarterback class this year, obviously a little underwhelming. You have Dylan Gabriel, who stands slightly taller than a hobbit. You have Cam Ward, who has been one of the more underwhelming number 1 overall picks in the draft. You have Jackson Dart, who got drafted by the Giants. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. I don't know. It's the Giants, so I have no kind of like point to reference as far as how good he's going to be in New York. Shedeur Sanders falls to the 5th round after talks that he could be the number 1 overall pick about a year ago. It's a really weird year for quarterbacks, and yet Jalen Milroe is there. Jalen Milroe, who is battle-tested in the SEC, not the greatest thrower, not the greatest quarterback as far as accuracy goes, but his legs are unbelievable. So knowing all that about Milroe and knowing all that about this year's quarterback class, Josh, how are you handling Milroe in your Dynasty FFPC Superflex drafts?
Drafting him as much as I can. And he's I don't have a lot of early, like you said, the quarterbacks in general are fairly underwhelming this year. I actually haven't drafted any other rookie quarterbacks outside of Milroe for that reason. I don't know if that's going to bite me in the ass at the end, but I compare him to another Jalen, who's another Alabama quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Now, I understand he may not have the same recognition from a passing standpoint or the ability to read an offense, but again, I use my eyes. I've watched a lot of football. I've watched a lot of Jalen Milroe. The guy looks incredible on the football field. He's had some big passing games. And I don't recall, but I do believe he had fairly long odds to get drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. It might have been like 20-1 plus to get drafted there. And I don't think there's a better spot for him. As I shared with you, the Sam Darnold story earlier on. I don't think Sam Darnold's going to do much behind that offensive line, right? Geno Smith got murdered last year. I don't expect a whole lot from the Seahawks this year in general. So I'm really storing Jalen Milroe as a dynasty asset. And I've traded up for him in leagues. I've drafted him as early as the 2.7. I've moved up and drafted him as late as the 3.8. I would assume his ADP is probably in that mid-third for super flexes, so I'm probably getting him around ADP. I got him at 4.1 in one where I sent like 4 different trade offers to try to get him, and everyone kept rejecting me, and he just happened to fall right on my lap. Sorry, 3.12 is where that was. I won that league the previous year. So he's definitely a polarizing asset, and the only negative is with the dynasty structures, you got to cut yourself down to 16 players at the end of the year. So I'm kind of accepting he's a player that I'm going to have to store for one season, but it's not out of the question that Sam Darnold gets benched
Yeah.
or just sucks or gets injured, right? Or one of those three options. So I think he's training with the notorious quarterback coach right now. I know the information came out recently. He's doing these VR trainings, so the guy's dedicated to being successful. And if he can turn his ability to read a defense around and be successful, I love running quarterbacks. Partially why I love Bo Nix and, another player that I just have a ton of shares on because I was getting him at the end of the first round when everyone was passing on him. I mean, it's pretty comical. The sixth quarterback drafted last year was Bo Nix at 1.12, I believe. And the sixth quarterback drafted this year was none other than Shedeur Sanders in the fifth round. So, pretty funny. I think it just proves the lack of quarterback talent this year. But if there's a quarterback that's going to hit, and I just look at this as a risk versus reward. I love high reward assets, and there's no better high reward asset, in my opinion, than Jalen Milroe in the late second or third round for a guy that if he starts and he's successful, he's going to turn into a second round dynasty asset the following year, similar to like another guy named Jalen Hurts, who I know Jalen Hurts was drafted round 2, but no one was even looking at him in rookie drafts. When he was being picked, he didn't go in the first round in one draft. So I think there's a correlation between the two. They're both named Jalen. They both went to Alabama. They both run. It's just one's a better thrower than the other, but there's no reason that Jalen Milroe can't improve. I would say the one thing that does discourage me from just absolutely loving this guy, and I don't know if I can love him anymore with how many shares I've already got of him, it's just the history of third round quarterbacks not doing a lickety split. You got Russell Wilson, and you've got really nothing else to back up your data from a successful quarterback that's going to get a second contract.
Josh, let me ask you this. If I was to ask you to set the over-under on starts for Jalen Milroe in Seattle this year, what would you put it at? Is it half? Is it 3.5? Is it 5.5? I don't even know what to think about Milroe as far as starts he would make in 2025 as a Seahawk.
As you were asking that question, I was thinking Vegas odds, and my Vegas odds were probably going to be a half because I don't know what I'd want to bet. So I believe that he would be about a half. Are they out of playoff contention and they let him play the last game of the season of what he can do? That's an option because I don't see the Seahawks as a playoff team this year. And I recall the way that the Darnold deal was structured is they don't have a lot of guaranteed money after the first season. So there's just nothing tying Sam Darnold there than more than 1 year. And just coach speak, McDonald loves this guy. So they were targeting him. He was somebody that I recall they said they considered him the best quarterback in the draft. And again, I'm just surprised that his odds to go to the Seahawks were plus 20 to 1, if I recall. But he's there. He's going to have an opportunity, I believe, to play some games. And when he goes on the field, I look at there's windows of opportunity there. And the window of opportunity is one, if he gets to the field, you're selling that asset and you're getting a big return. Or two, he's successful. Now you're really gaining a good return on a player like Jalen Milroe. So I love the guy. I own a lot of them, and I sure the hell hope he's successful in this league, mainly because of all the shares I have.
Lamar Jackson was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens while Mike Macdonald was there. Mike Macdonald was a linebackers coach for the first 3 years of Lamar Jackson's tenure in Baltimore. He left for 1 year to go to the University of Michigan. Then he was the DC for the Ravens for 2 years, again, while Lamar Jackson was quarterback. He is the head coach for Seattle, and his team ends up taking a player in day 2 of the NFL draft, a player that many pundits would tell you should not be a quarterback in the NFL. Should be a wide receiver, should be a running back, should be a Taysom Hill for lack of a better term. And he is not going to be. He's going to be a quarterback. And that's what they said about Lamar Jackson. Certainly don't want to equate the two, but there are some similarities between Lamar
Let me
Jackson and
piggyback
Joe
off
Lamar.
that real quick. Yeah, let me piggyback back off that real quick, because this is bringing back memories of the Dallas draft that I was in, and fortunately, most of my beers already wore off by this point. But here I am. It's the end of the draft, and we all know that they want to grab someone at the very end of the first round because you get that fifth-year option, right?
Yeah.
And boom, ding, 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 a trade gets announced, and I'm like, all right, cool. Broncos didn't get Josh Allen, but they're trading up 5 spots to get Lamar Jackson. It was the Baltimore freaking Ravens trading with the Patriots that year. So I remember that vividly. I thought the Ravens made a great pick there. As you said, McDonald had a big reasoning with them making that move to trade up and get him. Until you mentioned it, you're bringing back some memories. So yeah, I should probably have even more shares of Milroe for that reason. So I'm a little overweight, but you're giving me some good confidence in my picks, because I do remember, as we're talking about, that 32nd pick of Lamar Jackson, who a lot of people said may not even go to the mid to the late second round there. And we all know what the Ravens did with that pick, and it's completely changed the trajectory of that franchise.
The only thing I would say is the biggest difference. Lamar Jackson, late first-round pick for draft capital. Jalen Milroe, late third-round pick for draft capital. So I don't want to say they're perfectly similar. And Josh, I know you're not saying that as well, but we can both see there are some similarities between Jalen Milroe and Lamar Jackson as far as how they were handled in the NFL draft. Okay, we have gone way too long tonight. I want to get one last question for you. We have talked a lot, Josh, about some of the players that you are heavy on for your dynasty rookie drafts. Is there another player that maybe we haven't talked about tonight that you've been drafting a lot, that you've already got on a lot of your dynasty teams? And then perhaps a player that you have been avoiding on all your dynasty teams that you have little to no shares of right now. Let's talk about the yin and the yang here with this final question.
Yeah, and I would say a player that I do wish I had a few more shares of. I'm trying to draft him more is Scadaboo, and it's again back to the eye test. In that playoff, in both those playoff games, the guy looked great. He looked elite. He didn't want to come off the field for Arizona State, and he was a guy that I was like, cool. I'm gonna target this guy. And I'm thinking initially I could see him, and my mind's always thinking dynasty. I'm like, that's going to be a guy I'm going to get, late first round, early second round, and we all know what's happened. So it's funny. He was another guy I had on the Broncos radar. Really was hoping that he might be a pick. Compare him obviously to Christian McCaffrey. Maybe or maybe not, because they're both whites and they're both running backs, but they both play a similar style, being players that both run and catch the ball. So he's a guy that I wish I had some more shares of. I'm targeting him aggressively. I'm trying to move up in the mid-second. Mojo can confirm, but I bet his ADP is probably in that 2.4, 2.5 range on Superflex, and probably 2.1-ish in one quarterback leagues. So that's definitely a guy that I'm targeting in that regard. A guy that I'm actually really not a fan of, and it may come back to bite me. And one of my buddies here who's probably listening, Bill Van Ormer, is a Steelers fan, but I know he's also not a big Caleb Johnson fan, and it's simply because the guy, people are trying to compare him to Le'Veon Bell because of his upright running style. I know he had a pretty good 40-yard dash for his size, but I just don't look at him as someone that's going to break a lot of tackles or make you miss. And I like those types of running backs more than I call them the plotter type. So I do see why people are comparing him to a Najee Harris replacement, and him getting a good amount of usage could be beneficial for his redraft fantasy, value. I just am not excited about him in dynasty. Warren, I think, is a better talent. Warren's going to catch the ball. The offensive staff really likes Warren, but if I'm paying, late first or early round draft capital, I can name about 10 more guys that I like over Caleb Johnson, and Trey Harris is one of them, and they're not even going close range.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like, by the way, the notorious BVO, Bill Van Ormer, not only a great FFPC player, great KFFSC player. Always look forward to hanging out with him in Louisville every year. This dude is dialed in. You are dialed in as far as Scadaboo too. I think there's a lot of people that think Tyrone Tracy survived the 2025 NFL draft. I don't know if he did. And I'm very excited to see how Scadaboo is going to be introduced into this Giants offense in 2026. And the thing with Caleb Johnson, I think there's a lot of people who are definitely in favor of his landing spot, that this guy is going to be the Thunder to Jalen Warren's Lightning, at least for 2025. Well, the thing is with Thunder, sometimes it's a lot of loud noise, but it's not a lot of stats, right? And you need that Lightning with Jalen Warren. And I don't know how much pass catching Caleb Johnson's going to do. I worry that it's going to be like a first and second down role for him, and that in a Giants offense, as it is right now, I think that limits you a little bit. So I am lukewarm on Caleb Johnson here. And as a result, too, with your point here, Josh, I don't think I'm targeting him in my dynasty rookie draft, but Scadaboo, very, very interesting. We will continue to follow you on the X at salesrecruiter_. You have had so much success, not only in Dynasty. I know I billed you as the 6-time FFPC Dynasty champ tonight, but you have so much success in the main event, in the Big Gorilla, all these leagues that the FFPC has to offer. You know what you're doing here, and I'm so thankful that you shared that insight with not only me, but all the viewers tonight and all the listeners who will download this over the course of the next couple of days. Josh, enjoy the rest of drafting season. Enjoy the rest of your rookie drafts, and we will talk again very soon. Thank you so much for making this happen tonight.
Awesome, man. Thank you as always. I always look forward to your invites, and I really appreciate it. And thank you again to the FFPC, and I'll see you in Vegas, buddy.
You got it, Josh. We'll see you then. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks again. Take care.
That is Josh Siegel, ladies and gentlemen, the 6-time FFPC Dynasty champion, but a longtime FFPC player and a guy who has won so many main events and Big Gorilla championships, I can't even count. If you want to be like Josh, play the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. $1 million grand prize, $350 entry fee. You're going to get a $50 discount on every single, on every third draft that you sign up for. The early Rampage tournament is still going on. You'll automatically be entered into that. 7 Bananas promo is going on as well. MyFFPC.com is where to go. The FFPC Main Event, our flagship tournament, $1 million grand prize. Make sure you're entering that now. Slow drafts are going on at this moment, about another 3 weeks or so, roughly, till the live drafts are going on for the FFPC Main Event. $6.3 million plus prize pool, $1 million grand prize. This is when to draft right now. Get in while the getting's good, not only in the main event, but in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament and the FFPC Superflex Best Ball Tournament. $125 and $35 entry, respectively. Know that in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament, for the first time ever, we have added a $100,000 runner-up prize. If you don't win the whole thing and you take second, you're still going to get a 6-figure grand prize, something we're very proud to offer this year. Make sure you're registering at myffpc.com. And if you want to play 365 days of fantasy football a year, Dynasty Startups available. myffpc.com. $100 up to $5,000 for the entry fees. You have 1,900 plus leagues that have never folded in 15 plus years of the FFPC operating Dynasty. If you are in on Dynasty, you are in on Dynasty until you want to get out. Your league will be safe. myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Now, just bear this in mind going forward here. No FFPC Insider Access program this Thursday because we're going on tomorrow, an hour later than we normally would. It's going to be 8 o'clock. We'll go probably up till 10 o'clock tomorrow. It's tough to gauge. We are covering the FFPC Big Gorilla Hardway Draft. All these players are going to be entering for a $350 entry fee to try to win $1 million grand prize. And they call it the hard way for a reason, because these are some of the heaviest hitters in the industry. We got back-to-back champs the Go Bills franchise from the main event, drafting a team in this. Abib Agbatoba, who won the mid-stakes contest with the FFPC in back-to-back years. He's drafting in that. The Stack Owners from Player Profiler, Dan Williamson, Bradley Stalder, they're drafting in this. So many more. Austin Martin, a longtime FFPC player, he's drafting in this. Noah Riddell, a former guest of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and certainly no stranger to winning a lot of FFPC leagues. He is drafting in this. I wish I had the full list in front of me. I don't. Those are the ones I just remembered from memory. That starts tomorrow night, Wednesday, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Dave Tripoli and I will give live play-by-play, pick-by-pick coverage, and we'll have on some drafters who are drafting in this format to pop on and give us their philosophy. It will set you up for a lot of great fantasy football drafts this drafting season once you hear from them and see what they're doing. That's tomorrow on the Better Sports Network, 8 o'clock, myself and Dave Tripoli on FFPC Insider Access. Friday night, Scott Brzezicki, the 8-time FFPC Dynasty League champ, will join Farrell Elliott and I at 10 o'clock for a spirited discussion on how his rookie drafts are going and how he's setting up for his redraft leagues in the FFPC this year. Again, 10 o'clock Friday night, right here on this FFPC YouTube channel. Okay, I've kept you way too long. This is a record for how long this RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown has been. We will be back on this program. Remember, we go monthly in the off season, the non-playing season, as football guy Cecil Lammy would say. We will be back on this program until June 3rd. At 10 p.m. Eastern time, we will go again with another guest on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Until then, I have been Eric Balkman. For my guest tonight, Josh Siegel, and for RotoViz, this has been the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown on the FFPC YouTube channel and the RotoViz Podcast Network. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk with you again very, very soon.
Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.